according to some league sources, newly acquired Steelers quarterback Russell Wilson could get cut before the start of the 2024 season. Today on Steelers Talk, I'm going to be breaking down that rumor as well as the latest wide receiver trade rumors around guys like Terry McLaurin and Justin Jefferson and, of course, Brandon Aiyuk. And then also make sure you guys stick around today because at the end of today's show, I'm going to give you guys 8 moves that I think the Pittsburgh Steelers can still make an NFL free agency to make this team better heading into the NFL draft. But before I get into all of today's news and rumors surrounding the black and gold, make sure you guys give me a follow on my social media. On X, I am at Jack_Sperry, and on Instagram, I am at sparedog.football for more content from me on social media. I really do appreciate all of your support, and if you want additional content from me, go to at Jack_Sperry on X or at sparedog.football on Instagram. So now let's shift to Russell Wilson here, our top story today, where Adam Schefter went on the Pat McAfee show this week, and he said that he has heard that there is a scenario in which newly acquired quarterback Russell Wilson could get cut by the Pittsburgh Steelers before the start of the 2024 campaign if Justin Fields, who the Steelers just traded for, obviously, beats him out in camp, which would just be absolutely unbelievable to me. And listen, guys, this is a possibility because the Steelers aren't paying Russell Wilson anything, but I'm going to tell you this right now. It's highly, highly, highly unlikely that Russell Wilson ends up getting cut before the start of the 2024 season. All right, so you take a look at Russell Wilson's profile here. You're not paying him anything, all right? So $1.21 million, that is the vet minimum. So if Justin Fields comes into camp and he just plays way better than Russell Wilson and earns the starting job over him, the Steelers don't owe Russell Wilson anything. They can just cut him, right? So that's definitely a possibility for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, Russ is a big personality. Maybe you don't want him as your backup quarterback if Fields beats him out. But here's the thing, guys. I do not think that this is going to be an open competition, all right? And the chances of Russ losing the job to Justin Fields, at least in my opinion, are near zero, all right? Because he's going to get all the starting reps in training camp. He's going to get all the starting reps in the offseason program, all right? He's going to have to play absolutely terribly, and Justin Fields is going to have to play extremely well, not only in training camp practices, but also in the preseason games in order to usurp Russell Wilson by the start of the 2024 season. Now, it's certainly possible that Russ stinks during the season and then the Steelers end up going to Justin Fields. But the likelihood of the Steelers going into the 2024 season after training camp, heading into week 1 with Justin Fields as their starting quarterback over Russell Wilson, even though the team has already said they are rolling with Wilson as their number 1 QB, heading into the season, I think it's highly unlikely, and even though the possibility is still there that Russ ends up getting cut if he stinks and if Justin usurps him, I would say the chances of that happening are near zero because I'm still a believer in Russell Wilson. Now let me know down there in the comments section, what is the percent chance that Russell gets cut before the season? Scale it for me on a scale of 0 to 100 for today's pinned comment. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time by answering today's pinned question. So now, obviously, there's been some trade rumors that have been hitting the presses here over the last several days. You know, Omar Khan, the Khan artist, has been pretty quiet this week. No signings. You know, it seems like he's really trying to cook up a big wide receiver trade. And this week, there's been a lot of wide receivers that have been linked to the Pittsburgh Steelers, including Brandon Aiyuk, who was a second-team All-Pro last year, Terry McLaurin from the Washington Commanders, Antonio Brown's quote-unquote media company, CTESPN, has linked Justin Jefferson to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That would be unbelievable. And then, of course, Deebo Samuel and Courtland Sutton have also been linked to the Pittsburgh Steelers as well. Now, I don't think Jefferson, Deebo, or Courtland is going to happen. It seems like the teams want to keep those guys on their respective rosters. Okay, but the Aiyuk and McLaurin rumors intrigue me a bit. Okay, and I do think that Omar is trying to cook something up for the Pittsburgh Steelers here, and he's trying to land a proven veteran wide receiver option to put on the other side of George Pickens and really make the most out of Russell Wilson's ability to throw the football deep. So I have a couple of trade ideas here, and let's start with the Brandon Aiyuk trade. Now, I don't want to just straight up give San Francisco our first-round pick in exchange for Brandon Aiyuk, but I would think about a pick swap here in the first round. So we would take the 49ers pick, currently at number 31 overall, and we'd get Brandon Aiyuk, and then the 49ers would move up from 31 to 20, and they would get a third-round pick, number 84 overall. So we would still have one of our third-round picks, number 98 overall, but we'd give one of those to the San Francisco 49ers for the pleasure of getting Brandon Aiyuk as your number 2 wide receiver on the other side of George Pickens. All right, so now Aiyuk, I do think, is the most realistic option for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Aiyuk seems to really want to play with the black and gold. He even called out Mike Tomlin on Twitter this week, and the team has said that they are open to trading Aiyuk this offseason. So I do think this is probably the most realistic option, and Aiyuk is a perfect fit for what Arthur Smith is looking for in this offense. He's a really good run blocker. He's an elite route runner. He's kind of like Deontay Johnson in terms of play style, only he's a better run blocker, and I think he's actually a better route runner. So you're actually getting an upgrade over Deontay Johnson if you bring in Brandon Aiyuk this offseason. Now, Terry McLaurin is also an interesting option. I think he'd probably be a little bit less expensive because I don't think he's quite on the level of a Brandon Aiyuk. So I still have a pick swap of sorts here. So you would get the Commanders' first second-round pick here at number 36 overall. So it's right at the top of round 2. And Terry McLaurin. And then the Commanders would move up from 36 to 20. And then they'd also get the Steelers' fourth-round pick this year at 119th overall. Now, I do not think that the Washington Commanders are seriously considering getting rid of Terry McLaurin. All right, Cliff Kingsbury, their new offensive coordinator, likes to have a lot of 4 wide receiver sets. And right now, if you get rid of Terry McLaurin, if you're them, you have to fill that spot with somebody else. And I'm not sure they want to do that. He's still under contract for another 2 seasons. And he's been an extremely productive receiver in his time there in Washington with really bad quarterback play. I think they probably want to keep him. So I think the most likely option right now for the Pittsburgh Steelers is to trade for Brandon Aiyuk. Now, let me know down there in the comments section, which trade idea do you prefer? Would you rather trade more in order to get Brandon Aiyuk, the superior wide receiver, at least in my opinion, or would you rather give up less to go out and get Terry McLaurin? Which one do you prefer, 1 or 2? Let me know down there in the comments section. So coming up next year, I've got my 8 moves that I think GM Omar Khan can still make in NFL free agency to make this team better. But before I get into that list of 8 things, go ahead and click that subscribe button right now if you haven't already, because we're going to have breaking news coverage for you guys whenever the Steelers make a big move, all right? There's still a lot of good players out there in NFL free agency. If they make a big signing, if they trade for Brandon Aiyuk, we're going to be going live with breaking news coverage for you guys. Also, NFL draft coverage is going to really be ramping up here on the channel over the next month or so. Weekly mock drafts, in-depth scouting reports, positional rankings at all the positions of need for this football team. You're not going to want to miss that. And then also, it's all 100% free. So there's no reason, if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan and you want extensive Steelers coverage all throughout this offseason, all you got to do is click that subscribe button right now and join us every single day. All right, so now let's get into my list here. My first thing that I think the Steelers could do is cut DeMonte KZ. Now, I know the Steelers like KZ, but last year I think he kind of lost his legs a bit. He lost his speed, and he got beat on a lot of reps that he should not have been beaten in. I think back to that Seattle game where DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and Geno Smith were just playing with him. I mean, it was just embarrassing, okay? So DeMonte, I like the guy. He's a jitterbug. You know, he's a good locker room presence, all these different things, and he's a good guy. But I just think that, like Patrick Peterson, he's kind of lost a little bit of that speed in his game, and I'd rather bring in somebody else and use that $3 million that you would save in cap space by cutting him to bring in a different safety to kind of round out the 3-safety package that head coach Mike Tomlin is going to be deploying next season. And the guy that is obviously the best safety on the market right now is 4-time All-Pro Justin Simmons. Now, it's definitely probably a bidding war for Simmons' services at this point, but the fact that he's still on the market is telling me that the market for Simmons isn't as good as maybe Justin wanted it to be, okay? So I do think you could probably get him at a discount, and if that's possible and you can sign him for less than $10 million, then you could really solidify one of the best safety trios in the National Football League heading into the 2024 season. We know how much Mike Tomlin likes to use 3 safety packages, and you already have Minkah Fitzpatrick and the Joker, Deshaun Elliott, in-house. And if you had Justin Simmons to replace Devontae KZ in that kind of true free safety role, I mean, goodness gracious, the amount of disguises, the amount of things that you could do over the middle of the field to confuse opposing quarterbacks with this group of safeties would just be absolutely lethal. So if you can get Justin Simmons for a reasonable price, I would absolutely bring him in to make this defense even better than it already is. But I do not want to overpay for Simmons. I want to stress that, okay? I don't want to pay him $12 to $14 million to be essentially a third safety in this defense, all right? Or, maybe be a part of a rotation. I want to get him for less than $10 million. I want him to come here to be willing to play a role in the defense that maybe is a little bit different than the role he played there in Denver. Is he going to be willing to do that? I don't know, but if the opportunity's there, if I'm Omar Khan, I'm pulling the trigger. Then we'll go to another position here in the secondary, and I'd still like to sign Stephon Gilmore in NFL free agency to put on the other side of Joey Porter Jr., all right? Because you already have Dante Jackson in-house. I think that he has the body type and the skill set to potentially move to slot corner, all right? Dante has not played in the slot before, or at least not a whole lot, so that would definitely be a shift for him, but I think he's going to be willing to do that, and I think he's going to be able to do that as well. And then Stephon Gilmore could be an excellent mentor to not only Joey Porter Jr., who is already an excellent corner, but also to Corey Trice Jr. and Darius Rush, 2 other young corners in this cornerback room. Stephon still had a really good season last year with the Dallas Cowboys. He was their number 1 corner when Trayvon Diggs went down with his injury, and he really stepped into that role, and that defense really didn't miss a beat the entire 2023 campaign. So some people are going to say this is going to be another Patrick Peterson, sign another old guy in free agency. I disagree with that. I think Gilmore is playing at a higher level than what Patrick Peterson was when he was coming in last year. I still think that as a number 2 cornerback, you could do a lot worse than Stephon Gilmore, especially because at this point you could probably get him for less than $10 million. Then another move that I'd make is, we talked about it earlier, I would trade for Brandon Aiyuk, and I would take that deal that I proposed earlier in the video where I would do that pick swap in the first round. Number 31 overall, there should be a pretty decent offensive tackle, or, Jackson Powers-Johnson might fall there to number 31, and I'd rather take JPJ there at 31 than there at 20. So I do think that this is a move that could work for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, you're losing one of your third-round picks, which isn't great, but you're bringing in a guy in Brandon Aiyuk who is a proven all-pro caliber wide receiver, and I'd love to see him in the black and gold, especially if he agrees to an extension worth $25 million per season. That would lock him up for the next 4 years here in Pittsburgh alongside George Pickens. And honestly, man, I look at this picture right here. I look at this edit and I see Brandon Aiyuk in the black and gold, and this just looks right to me, man. I would love to see him here with this football team for the right price. I'm not going to overpay for him, but man, I really think that Brandon Aiyuk could be a major weapon for Russell Wilson heading into the 2024 season. And I really do want to go all in when it comes to the offensive weapons they bring in. You could in theory get a wide receiver in the first or second round, and that could be your number 2 wide receiver. But at the end of the day, as good as these wide receiver prospects are, they're still going to be rookies. They're still going to have to take their lumps as NFL players. And if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, the Russell Wilson move tells you that you're trying to win Super Bowls now. So it might make a little bit more sense here to go out and get a Brandon Aiyuk, who is a proven all-pro caliber wide receiver, to put on the other side of George Pickens to really make sure that this offense is going to be ready to roll heading into next season. Another player on offense that I would sign David Bakhtiari. Now, I know some of you at home are probably saying, man, this guy can never stay healthy, and you'd be right about that. He hasn't had a season with over 1,000 snaps since 2019. So he has definitely had his injury troubles, all right, all these different things, and he's definitely had trouble staying on the field. But when he's on the field, guys, he is one of the best left tackles in football, specifically as a pass protector. He's at the point in his career here where he's probably looking to win Super Bowls and championships, and he would probably be willing to take a discount to be able to go to a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers with a great head coach, with a Super Bowl winning quarterback, with a great roster. And right now, as much as I think Dan Moore Jr. is okay as a swing tackle, I think Bakhtiari needs to be the guy here because it really does open up your opportunities in the draft. Because if you go into the draft here with only Dan Moore Jr. and Broderick Jones, it's like, I feel like you got to address that need in round one. But if you get David Bakhtiari, that could give you the freedom to get a more developmental type offensive tackle in the middle rounds, maybe someone like a Patrick Paul or maybe Tyler Guyton or something like that. And, you don't have to take a Talisi Fuaga or an Amarius Mims in round one. It really opens up your possibilities. And, hey, if David Bakhtiari stays healthy and he can stay on the field, that's great. He's one of the best left tackles in football. So I think that this move makes sense for the Steelers. I think it makes sense for Bakhtiari, and I think you could still get him for a pretty decent price at this point in the offseason. Then a player that I would sign at the vet minimum here that really intrigues me is Isaiah Simmons, who started his career as an inside linebacker with the Arizona Cardinals. He was a top 10 pick. Didn't really work out. He's not a really good inside linebacker, guys. Inside linebacker is a really tough position because you have to do a lot of things at once. You have to know all the coverage rules. You need to know what your run fit is and all these different things. You have to be a good tackler in open space. And Isaiah Simmons just wasn't good at multitasking in that way. But Isaiah Simmons does have a skill set that could work in the National Football League, specifically as a tight end eraser, as a strong safety, and as a nickel cornerback in man coverage sets. Those are two things he does actually really well because he's a big dude, he's physical, he's a good blitzer, and he's actually pretty good in man coverage as well. So I would love to see how Mike Tomlin would use his skill set as kind of like a joker, kind of like the queen in the defense. He can move anywhere. He can play any spot, and I think that he'd be a very versatile piece. And if you can get him for the vet minimum, I mean, why not bring in this versatile guy that's super athletic at his size? I really do think Isaiah Simmons could be used in the right way by Mike Tomlin. And if you can get him for the $1.2 million vet minimum, bring him in all day, baby. I'd love to see Simmons in black and gold. And then the two pieces here that I'd like to restructure is Minkah Fitzpatrick and Alex Highsmith. Both of these guys have significant time left on their contracts. And listen, man, I don't want to do significant restructures, all right? I just want them to do what's needed in 2024. Because if you bring in a guy like Brandon Aiyuk, I mean, that's going to be 25 to like 26, maybe even $27 million per season in an additional cap hit for the seasons to come. And if Russell Wilson or Justin Fields establishes themselves as the franchise quarterback moving forward, you're going to have to give them a new contract starting next year as well. So you don't want to backload Minkah or Alex's contracts too much. And if anything, you want them to take on as much cap hit as possible heading into this season, because it sounds like heading into the future, there's going to be some big expenditures for the Pittsburgh Steelers to have to deal with. So only do what's needed for 2024 when it comes to these restructures. Now it's your turn. Let me know down there in the comments section, what move do you really want to see the Pittsburgh Steelers make this offseason? I want to know. Let me know down there in the comments section when you get a second. All right, that's going to be it for today's show, guys. I really do appreciate all of your support. Again, if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Jack_Sperry. I post Steelers content on there every single day, free channel updates, all these different things, big announcements for the channel. And then also on my pinned tweet right now, I have my latest NFL mock draft, all 32 picks in round one. So if that's something that interests you, go to Twitter right now at Jack_Sperry and consider giving me a follow.